light on the path begins with the words, preliminary words, before the eyes can see, they must be incapable of tears, and so on. Before the ear can hear, it must have lost its sensitiveness. It suggests, of course, that we do not really see nor hear. We see with the physical eyes, of course, and hear with the physical ear. But if we really saw and heard with the inner eye, the inner faculty of hearing, the world would be entirely different. For what we perceive with eye or ear, any of our senses, including the mind, is what makes us act as we do. There are certain well-known truths. In the Vedantic literature, they gave the metaphor of the snake and the rope. If the eyes see a snake where there is a rope, which makes the mind believe that there is a poisonous creature, the action is quite different from what it would be if there is the knowledge that there is no snake but only a rope. The fear, the agitation, anxiety, and so forth, which arise in the presence of the snake, imaginary though it may be, cannot arise when confronted by a rope. This metaphor has been repeated hundreds of times, but nonetheless, we can think about it once again and many more times later on. If we realize its importance, we would realize the need to purify our vision. Purify the mind, where what is seen by the senses is presented in a particular form. The Vedantians also say that illusion arises when the true nature of existence is suppressed by the mind, and it projects an image of what exists, which is quite unreal, but appears to be very real. For the moment, the existence of the rope is obscured in the mind. The rope doesn't exist there at all. Instead, it projects the image of a snake and all other images which could be connected with the snake image. And action proceeds from that. And so, the mind is the slayer of the real. But it has a strong belief that it sees the real, that or what it sees is actuality, reality. Maya is partly this. Maya has been translated as illusion. We can say it is a veiling of the fact, veiling of what actually exists, and the creation of a mirage of some kind. And part of the process of Maya, the veiling and the image making, is time. Time is a great deluder. Time, of course, is in the mind. We are not speaking about what Krishnamurti called chronological time. We see the sun rise and set. The 24 hours are divided in whatever way people want to divide. They have not always divided the hours into 24 segments. So that is all man-made. But far more important, the experience of time. There is a beautiful story in the Indian scripture, somewhere there, I don't remember where, but I remember it because Krishnaji used to repeat it every now and again. It is said that the sage Narada went to Vishnu, the all-penetrating sacred reality, personified as Vishnu. Vishnu literally means that which enters or penetrates into everything. And asked about what is reality. And apparently irrelevantly, Vishnu said, "Go and get me a glass of water." And Narada went to get the water, found himself in a strange land. I am condensing the whole story. Met a beautiful young woman and fell in love with her, married her, had several children. Years passed, and there was a great flood. The whole land was flooded by torrents of water, and their house was washed away. And he found himself clinging to his wife so that she would not get washed away. The children were hanging on, but one by one, the children were taken away by the flood, and finally also the wife. And he woke up, and Vishnu said, "Where is my glass of water? Why has it taken you so long to get it?" That is the nature of time. We must have all experienced moments when there is the phenomenon which is called time stood still. Is it time or the mind which stands still at those moments? These cannot be understood through words or conceptually. One must actually feel as an experience what it is. When you are suddenly faced with something extraordinary, beautiful, something very true, which you never experienced before, those are the moments when time truly stands still. So it's important to realize that this thing called time is in the mind. The state of the mind makes time what it is, makes it appear, makes it exist, or occasionally disappear. I would like to read here a few words which are given in the Secret Doctrine. The present is the child of the past. The future is begotten of the present. Let us try to grasp it inwardly. The present is the child of the past. The future is begotten of the present. And yet, O present moment, knowest thou not, thou hast no parent, nor canst thou have a child, that thou art ever begetting but thyself. Before thou hast even begun to say, I am the progeny of the departed moment, the child of the past, thou hast become the past itself. Before thou utterest the last syllable, behold, Thou art no more the present, but verily the future. Thus are the past, present, and the future, the ever-living Trinity in one. The Mahamaya. Maha means great. Mahamaya is great illusion. The Mahamaya of the absolute is. I-S, capitals. Perhaps it's worthwhile for us to silently ponder this before the present moment can look back. It is already itself the past. Before it can utter a syllable about the future, it has become the future itself. So the present moment is an elusive instant, and yet it is the only reality. Can we act in anything except the present? You can imagine what you might have done in the past or what you will do in the future, but you can actually act only in the present. That is, in that extraordinary instant. The more we meditate on this, the more we begin to see that there is really no continuity. Continuity is time. The instant is not time. There is a school of Buddhism which speaks about this, that every instant is on its own. But the mind which connects the instants, which by the connection can be turned into minutes and hours and yugas and mega yugas or whatever you like, makes time by projecting continuity where there is actually none. I hope this is not abstruse. But if we go back to what the quotation we mentioned, we see that the present and the past and the future, as it says, are all part of some kind of Maya. The word Maya is said to come from the verbal root ma, to measure. The present instance cannot be measured. It's so fragile, if I might use that word, so mystic a moment. But when the mind gives continuity, it is able to measure, bring it into the field of measurement. And So it speaks about time being long or short, exciting or wearisome. We attach emotions to periods of time. And we give time a reality which it doesn't have. Now, many problems arise from this delusion which is time. Let us take what we call aging, which is a problem to various people. Causes anxiety and fear, and if spending time on how to dye their hair or remove the wrinkles or whatever it is. That is creating more illusion around it. A tree is what it is. But when we cannot think of the tree without presuming there was a seed, and the seed sprouted and became a little sapling and an older sapling, etc., etc., all of which is projected by the mind, we say the tree is old, in contrast to the tree being young. But this is all built up in the mind. The tree at any moment is what it is, nothing else. But the projections of the mind make it young or old. This is all comparative. We create the opposites with our mind. The opposites which don't exist in the world of truth. This is what the Bhagavad Gita repeatedly tries to bring about. If you speak about honor or dishonor, victory or failure, it's comparative. What do we mean by honor? We compare what people say with what they could have said. And we say it's honor or dishonor. So there is a whole set of values which we have created by manufacturing a scale inside our own mind. And we live in this world of mental projections. And the values which accompany those images we create. And it all seems extremely real. And that feeling is very strong in some, not so strong in others. When it is very strong that this is the reality, we become materialists. We can be physical materialists. Perhaps if we quit the physical body, we may become astral materialists, believing that is the only reality. And it's only if the mind somehow wakes up, then it realizes that previously it was in a state of illusion. And the whole problem is how to wake up. up to the human point in evolution, there is nothing to be done. Life progresses, consciousness unfolds naturally by itself. We cannot see any symptoms of such feelings as loyalty, affection in plants. Perhaps they exist at a certain level of the plant consciousness, but we don't see it. It doesn't express itself. But in animals, you can actually see that the emotional faculties have grown. The dog's joy when people whom it knows arrive, its sense of loyalty, have far outgrown what may exist at the plant level so far as we can see. So this happens by itself. But it seems as if in the divine plan, it has brought everything to a stage where there is awareness, or could be awareness, of what is going to happen. Paradoxically, we can project something of the future because of this. What we project, of course, is not reality, but it could be a mirror image, imperfect perhaps, of what might be. Just as we can see the past, we can perhaps, with our present faculties, have a glimpse of our future, and therefore help to bring about that future. This is a special human gift, because humanity has come to that stage of consciousness. To put it more simply, the human can know that the mind is in illusion. If you don't like the word illusion, you can say that it is lost in a particular level of unreality. Lost verily because it refuses to normally to even consider whether that is reality or there is something else. But if proof was needed in the modern age, there is enough proof to show that our senses have a limited range, that our mind cannot conceive of certain things. Only theoretically the mathematicians and the physicists postulate certain things, but they are not meaningful to us as an experience. I don't know if it is to those scientists. But at least theoretically, the possibility of a larger reality has been presented in the present day world. And yet there are numerous people who refuse to accept it. The reality of this small field of perception is so strong that they are afraid of looking elsewhere. The past exists only in the mind, so does the future. But the impact of that non-existent past and future is so strong that we are unable to be still in the present. As we said, action is only in the present. And if that action is not colored or distorted by the memory of the past or of hopes and imaginings about the future, then there is a different kind of action in the present. Can we say it is spontaneous, creative action? It's certainly spontaneous. Perhaps we don't really know what is creative. And that is karma yoga, in the real sense of the term. Memory is, of course, necessary to function in this world of unreality. I know people feel very uncomfortable if they hear such things, that we are living in a world of unreality. The other day somebody asked me, you said that you must not think about what is right and wrong. I didn't say it, but there is something deeper than thinking about right and wrong, and that is to know spontaneously, naturally, what is right and wrong. That's what we were talking about. But one can feel uncomfortable about this sort of thing because we are so used to it, and nobody likes to be outside the patterns of habit. So, memory comes in the way, it colors and distorts action, and action means response in the present. That is why we never respond wholeheartedly, spontaneously. We don't know what is love in the full sense of the term. Because if we respond in the present, it has a different quality. But memory comes and says all sorts of things. Oh, this person is like that, is like this, so I must put my words in such and such a way. Or we project that so-and-so will behave like that. And with all that, those images and memories and all that in the mind, we respond. And therefore, relationship is not what it is. It becomes something which we create. We spoke about it the other morning, that real relationship is. You don't make relationships. But unfortunately, in the world of unreality, we are always manufacturing relationships. And they don't fit in with each other. You have a certain concept of your relationship with the wife or the daughter or whatever it is, and that person has a different concept and they don't fit in. Memory is, of course, necessary for the ordinary practical things. So let us not jump to the conclusion and say, you said that memory distorts, so am I to become an idiot? It would be idiotic to say that. But we must see that memory and projections of the mind, and we reinforce the reality we think there is in unreal things by words. I think this is also important to ponder. When we give a word to certain things, I don't mean when you call a chair, but when you say, for example, give a word to something which cannot be denoted by a word. You use the word truth. Someone said, the words are at best honest lies. That is a fact. So, the word can mean anything to anybody, which is what the word God means. And so we can endlessly dispute over the meaning of the word God, truth, and then even start grand wars over this question. What is truth? See how the whole process goes on. Love, truth. The most important things cannot be put into words, but we have to use words constantly in our practical life, but not as much as we think we have to. But it comes to the point where we believe the word is the thing. That when we say, I love you, I really love you. But I am cheating the other person and I am cheating myself. And we get used to it. Society says, you must say these things. How lovely to see you. You person may not mean that at all. But it's good manners perhaps, and so say that. So words are also tools of illusion. In the Eastern tradition, they said, the form or appearance. And let us remember that even the forms we see are according to the capacity or incapacity of the physical organ and of the internal organ, which is the mind. Mind at a certain level, the ordinary mind. What value we give to a certain color depends on the previous ideas we have in the mind. Whether a form appears beautiful or not beautiful depends on what we are. So the form, the word or name, time, and location, these are all ways in which illusion affects our minds. The physical body is located in a particular place, and therefore we believe that we have location. Let us see in a way how absurd it is when we speak of being an Indian or an American or a European or whatever it is. Again, for practical purposes, we may say that if you go to the immigration office and say, I am a universal citizen, they won't accept it. But is it real? The body belongs to that, or took birth in a particular location. That's all. But this becomes a reality. Perhaps not to us here, but to many people, it's a reality which produces great violence and other negative reactions. So it is said that illusion confines us in these different ways. And it's all in the mind. The mind is the slayer of the real, because time arises in the mind. What we see or think we see as the reality of an appearance of a form is all produced in the mind. The sense of time and of belonging to something, which is attachment, it's all in the mind. And the mind is the slayer of the real. The great question is, who will slay the slayer?
The following program was produced by the Theosophical Society in America.
The spiritual path is the awakening from living in unreality to levels of greater and greater reality. It is a series of progressive awakenings, as HPB called them. Awakening corresponds to the word buddhi and buddha. Buddha is to wake up. It also means to become wise. There are people who feel perplexed by Krishnaji's statements, which seem to indicate that there is no progression. You are awake or you are not. It's true in a certain way. You can't be both asleep and awake at the same time. When such statements as you cannot serve God and mammon at the same time were made, it meant the same thing. You can't travel north and south at the same time. But for the awakening, at whatever level to take place, there has to be a preparation. something happens. Let us think of the physical body. The body and brain are active for a certain number of hours. For a person who is serious, there should be daylight hours, for reasons which I won't go into. But after a period of activity, which may vary according to the constitution of each person, the body must be in a state of repose. It must sleep. It must be put to sleep, and the sleep can vary in quality. When does the waking up take place? I mean naturally. When all the demand upon energy from the outer world has been dealt with in a different way in the inner world of the mind. And there is a renewal of energy, there is an awakening. This is a natural process. The cycle of death and rebirth is very similar. And this awakening happens when a particular level or type of experience has happened for a period which is useful from the soul's point of view, from the point of view of that which is occupying the body. If that experience is insufficient, the body may die, but the person comes back and continues on the same round. Let us presume that the experiences are of a grossly sensual or sensory nature. And the craving continues even as the body is ready to disintegrate. Then that craving must be fulfilled in another incarnation. That is what draws a person down into incarnation, because there is a necessity to have more of that experience. It's like when you go to lunch and you haven't had enough, you go and take a second helping, or a third or a 10th. But when that experience has been sufficient, experience is not just outside experience. It is drawing the lessons from the experience, finding what needs to be found through that experience. Then a little awakening takes place. Person says, this kind of sensory experience is so tiring. I'm weary of it all. I don't want it anymore. Not temporarily. If it says, I've had enough of it for the time being, another incarnation will follow. But if the heart says, it's really no good, is there nothing else in life? Then that longing for something which is more real helps to awaken the mind or consciousness, whatever you like to call it, to a different level. Then for a long time, experience will take place at that level. For instance, there are people who don't care about sensual experiences, but they want more and more of intellectual experience, let us say. And it seems as if this is the thing in life. But a time may come when they find that this kind of intellectual knowledge doesn't lead anywhere. They are exhausted. They say, is there something else, another way of looking at life which is more meaningful, which vitalizes me instead of wearying me? Then perhaps glimpses of another kind of reality will come. So there is awakening at different levels. And then there may be a change to a different dimension altogether of consciousness. I believe that that is what Krishnamurti was speaking about when he said, you are either awake or you are not awake. The awakening there is into a new level of awareness. Now, we all talk about the unity of life because conceptually and to a certain extent intuitionally, we realize that is a truth. But if even for a short time you actually experienced it, then it's quite a different thing. It's a little state of exaltation. It's an initiation into a new realm. Have you not experienced some moments when really with all your being you say, I could love all the world at this moment? Every little piece of grass, the tree, the rabbit, even the snake, or whatever it is, the good people, the bad people, they all seem to be equally wonderful. So I could love all the world right now. And it gives a thrilling feeling of something like bliss at a small level, low voltage bliss. It is a preview of a different state of being. It's not that the trees and the grass and the rabbits disappear from view, but you see them in a different light, in a different perspective. And we are told by those who have perhaps moved on to new fields of perception that there are levels within depths within depths of glory. I always think it's inspiring to think of what I believe it was a Christian saint who said, you travel to God, but then you travel in God. Veil after veil will lift, as the Light of Asia says. Now, let us come back. We have to awaken out of the unreal into the real. Sometimes people ask, what is the sign of progress? How do I know that I am moving and not marking time? Now, if you think of the rope and the snake again, if you see the snake and anger arises in you, fear, anxiety, etc., you are in the unreal world. But if you are tranquil, you are calm, you are sensitive, you are in harmony with everything, it means you are moving into a different state. And we have to move into the world of reality, which is the world of unity, which can be experienced with at a depth and with an intensity and clarity and so on, of which we have no conception, except through the writings of sages and mystics. That's why in India at least they said, don't dismiss the words of the wise. Listen to them, because it may help you to awaken something in yourself, a new perception. But don't repeat the words of the sages. They may be pointing in a certain direction, but unless you know it through your own experience, it is not reality. But you can take help from the words of the wise. This is a whole field of study. What are the means to awakening? But we don't have time for all that. But this awakening has to take place naturally. Every individual unit of the great life, and we are all that, so yes, every creature, every monad has its own quality. It's really a miracle. In that unity, there is nothing which is like another thing. But we can see it to some extent around us. You have a garden of roses. Every flower seems to bloom in its own way, and there is no repetition. Probably if it was put into slow motion, it will show that it unfolds itself in slightly different ways, although they are all roses. And the Theosophical teaching about the 7 rays, and that means 7 forms of individuality or uniqueness, which combined in different ways is infinite number of forms of opening up, awakening. That is why truth is a pathless land, because there is no path which you actually follow. You have to, there is a path that is from the unreal to the real, but you move to it in your own extraordinary way. But they say that there are three major ways of proceeding from the unreal to the real. Through knowing, which we can distinguish from knowledge in the sense of memory, information, conceptual knowledge, through knowing. Through unconditional devotion to the truth, not knowing yet what the truth is, but without knowing that devotion can exist, and through selfless service. Karma Yoga, we already spoke about it. It is action in the present. I won't repeat it. But these paths are not in watertight compartments because they mingle with each other. You cannot grow in the power to know without relinquishing part of yourself. And we can say all of them demand that the personal self, the separative self, should die. And that death is called nirvana. Nirvana means to extinguish. All of them are freedom, the path to freedom, freedom from illusion, from different levels of unreality, which means freedom also from evil, because it's belief in the unreal things which makes people hostile to each other, compete with each other, be suspicious, envious, etc., etc. It's the path of virtue. There is a very well-known Buddhist book which is called The Path of Purity. It is the self which is the source of all impurity. When there is no self, there is virtue in the highest sense. Shall we ponder a little? We said there are awakenings at every stage. The awakening doesn't happen in an instant. We can aid that movement. That is the preparation. We can qualify, to put it in another way, but it's when we say we qualify, it's something like ambition, but without us any kind of ambition. Quietly, naturally, accepting ourselves as we are, can we help the progress to take place? It's like if you want to go up the mountain path, you can find the right shoes to wear and things like that. So what does this preparation mean? We are all imitative, conformists from the spiritual point of view. And when we are that, we are not true to ourselves. So what does that inner integrity mean? Never trying to appear something which we are not. In India, you know, it was the tradition to be vegetarian if one wanted to live the spiritual life. Behind it was the philosophy or teaching that hurting others means denying the unity of life. Whether you hurt human beings or others, creatures, it's all the same. But there were thousands of people who were vegetarian because it was the thing to do. Now they have come into contact with the modern world, which is really the Western world sort of spreading its ideas, because I think mainly because of the success of technology. The thing to do is not to be vegetarian. I'm not discussing whether it is good or bad. I personally believe one should not hurt in anything if it can be avoided. But this is not doing a thing because it is right, but doing it because it conforms to everybody else. Perhaps we can leave this question to tomorrow morning's session. What is this preparation? Can we aid the divine plan by understanding how things should progress further from where we are?